Hey mates, I'm Alex.
And I'm Gaston.
Welcome to Power Mates.
This is a place to learn and share about Fabric and Power Platform. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this channel with your friends and colleagues. So today we are going to be diving into an amazing demo on Translytical Task Flows in Fabric/Power BI.
Oh man, you got me on this one, Gaston. Is that translate even a word? So you need to explain what the is this?
That's right. I got your back. So let me explain a little bit this. Starting with the translytical new word. Translytical is transactions in one place and analytics in the other place. So it's summarization between transactions and analytics. So Power Mates, we will be following one of the samples from Microsoft. That's gonna be down in the description of this video. We are gonna be going step by step on a task flow tutorial from this translytical feature. So we are going to be creating a SQL database first, of course, in Fabric. We are going to be developing a user data functions in top of that, another new item in the Fabric space. And we are be connecting all the dots together in a Power BI report. And we are going to be using a button to do that. So the scenario here is overall, we are going to be creating data annotation or descriptions for users so they can add a product descriptions to a SQL database and see that instantly in their Power BI report. So let's talk first about the prerequisite about all of this. First of all, of course, you need a Fabric workspace to make this happen. Then we need to enable, if you know the admin of your Fabric capacity, you need to enable SQL database in top of that and user functions in top of that. You need, of course, the latest version of Power BI Desktop. As we talk right now, the latest version is May 2025. So you need to enable the preview features on your Power BI Desktop. One of them, of course, is going to be Translytical Task Flow, and that allow you to use the text slicer. Then we are going to be accessing the AdventureWorks sample database in SQL in Fabric. And in the Fabric portal, we are going to be creating the SQL database from scratch and choose the simple AdventureWorks, database. So remember that. Then we are going to be creating the user data function, and we are going to be demoing how to do that, creating the function from scratch, creating the container from scratch. But enough of me talking. Let's switch to my machine and let's set up the stage for that process. In my machine, I am looking right now in, as usual, the homepage for the Fabric tenant. In my case, I have my Translytical workspace. If you don't know how to create this, watch some of our first episodes where we explain the details of how to create your workspace from scratch. Remember, as Alex mentioned all the time, for Power Platform, as well for the data platform space, you can enable your own tenant. You can go and get a subscription totally free for the developer program. You can enhance your own tenant. You can enable a Fabric trial version on that one. And of course, then you can create your own workspace on this one. I have my name here, Translytical Workspace. You can pick any name on this one. As I mentioned before, we are following this tutorial that we are going to be sharing this URL with all of you so you can go step by step on this process. But then remember that in this scenario, we are going to be, as we discussed before, start with storage of the data. Then we are going to be developing the data, and then we are going to visualize the data. So for the storage of the data, we start the process with this one, the creation of a SQL database. Remember then that if you are in your workspace, you create a new item from there and you can create a SQL database with this option back here. Still, this is in public preview, but you can click on that icon and you can start your PowerMates database from scratch. After you create this database, You create a database, and then you need, of course, data in top of your database. But of course, you can start working directly with simple data, and that is exactly the tutorial explaining that you can, instead of creating this from scratch, you can choose the simple data option to load all the data from AdventureWorks. So once you have your new SQL database up and running, you're going to be getting, and I'm going to open in another window here, you're going to be looking at my Translytical. This is my SQL database that I create from scratch. And you can see that when I open this one, you can see all the tables coming all together from the AdventureWorks. Uh, Between I'm loading the data here, I am showing you that, with this icon, this is going to be populating all the simple data in your new database from scratch. So you don't need to do any kind of ingestion pattern to populate your database at this point. Then, after you have that database up and running, it's time to create a user data function. This is a new item in the Fabric space. So with the new user data functions, is so simple as you go into the workspace again, go into the new item, and then you can see here that there's a user data function. Remember that if you don't have or you don't see this visible in your tenant, you need to ask your admin to enable this user data function that is a public preview, and you need to enable that across your tenant. Once you click on that icon, user data function, you need to name that PowerMates user data function. You need to create that. And in our tutorial, we are going to following this. First of all, you need to connect your user data function with your SQL database. So once you create your user defined function, you need to go to manage connections in the top of your screen. And manage connections allow you to connect this with your database. So in this case, I can connect this with PowerMates database. And that allow you to user functions connect to your own database on top of that. Then after that, you need to populate with some function codes. In this case, we are running a Python scripting that the Python scripting itself is going to be the one that allowing us to connect to the database and then provide the right back functionality for our SQL database. So this function here that I'm going to be using this option to copy all my code, that is the one that allow us to enhance and doing the right back capability. If you follow this instruction, it's telling that, we are taking a product description from the product model ID. This is managing the error handling, they establishing the connection to the SQL database, they insert the data into the product description table, they are getting exactly what we need in terms of inserting data into the product model description table, and so on. So you can keep enhancing, and this is going to be the purpose of our video. We are going to keep enhancing what is doable from the user data functions perspective. So once we got all this code, it's just a matter of getting here, create a new function, and after we create the new function, we are going to be leveraging removing this code and pasting the code that we have here. The most important thing here is this one here, that is the name of our database. This is the connection, establishing the connection in the Python code. And then all of this, they are going to be getting all the tables from here to update some of the tables via this code. In the tutorial, is mentioning exactly what I explained before in terms of the SQL, and then we need to test the simple code. Of course, this is a test that you need to run against your user functions. Then after that, we need to grant the user permissions. This is optional, but strongly recommend to leverage this one to see the execution of function. So you need to go here, and before you publish your code, you can go to the share option in the top right of screen, and that is where you can see the permissions in top of this. So you can manage the permissions with this icon over here. And once you manage the permissions, you're adding the people that you need in top of that data. So you can go to advanced option and see everything that you need to put in place back there. Once you define all of this, you need to create a Power BI report, because the way you can see that this is working is leveraging a connection to the SQL database and test that in your Power BI report. So I'm going to be open a Power BI desktop session. I have my Power BI desktop up and running here. And from Power BI desktop, I need to start from scratch, because what I need to do is, first of all, connect my Power BI desktop with my SQL database. And I'm going to show you exactly how I can do this. So I'm going to open the write back option here, because I already have this up and running on my end with the report that I built from scratch. But first of all, of course, you are going to be opening this in the top of the screen, one lake catalog, and connect your report with your SQL database. That is the first step in overall the process. Then after I connect with the SQL database, I need to follow up on connecting with some of those tables. Yeah, 3 tables in top of my SQL database from AdventWorks data. If I go back to my Power BI desktop, you can see that if I transform the data and see the data source settings in my end, I am connecting to my database. And if I change the source here, I'm going to see exactly the server and the database. And of course, if I transform the data, I'm going to see all the tables that I'm getting from my SQL database in Fabric. And you can see all the 3 tables that the tutorial is mentioning before: the product description, the product model, and the product model product description. Those are the 3 tables that we got in our tutorial. And of course, in this case and this scenario, you can check that in our case, this is working as a direct query connection. And that is really important, that you understand that in this case, it's really important that the connection is direct query, because what we want to do is, once someone add a new description, that goes directly to the data SQL database and is loading again in my Power BI report right away. So, and you can check my connection right there. Remember that you have in Power BI import or direct query mode. Import is caching in memory, direct query is going to the data source itself. And again, if I go back to my tutorial, after I click on the 3 tables, I start building the report. In my report, there's 2 or 3 different topics that I would love to mention here. One is I am building this table with the name of all the categories of products and all the products IDs. That is the first table, and I can see that in my Power BI report is this table in the left of my screen. Then the second thing that I see is another table that I see with text slicer. Remember that this text slicer is pretty new. If you don't see this icon of text slicers, what you need to do is go into your Power BI desktop, go into File, Options, and in Options, you're going to check the preview features. And it's really important that if you don't see those kind of icons, you go to your preview features back here in the left of my screen, clicking in preview features, and at the end of this screen, you're going to see Translytical Task Flow that allow you to see those icons back there, and that icon that I mentioned before, those are the new icons that you can check here, and the text is exactly this icon over there. So this icon is the one that I am creating here. That is the text slicer that allow me to write a new product description. So going back to our tutorial, you can check in the tutorial that the next step on this journey is add the text slicer, writing the description of my text slicers, and then on the taskbar, as a next step, we are inserting a blank button that is going to be doing the action of submitting the description to the SQL database. So this icon, you can go to the Power BI desktop, you can see my icon here. I create this submit icon that is just insert and see the button of a blank button over there. So that is the step to insert the blank option over here. But then you need to create kind of a connection of this submit to do some action in top of that. So that's where you need to define the properties. And some of the properties, first of all, is define the style of the icon, define the text of the icon, that is the submit. You can see the text over there. That is the text of the icon. But then most important here is the action. You need to enable to do some action. And this is where the magic really happens. That is, the action is getting a data function mentioning exactly, hey, this is my workspace in my Fabric tenant. This is my function name. And this is exactly the function that I would love to trigger in top of this data. And after that, I would love to write a product description in top of my data. So if you see, every single of this option is almost everything is drop down. You click on the data function, then you select based on the workspace. I have a bunch of workspace over there, but then you can click on the function set, say, hey, I would love to use this function. Then I would love to define this data function. And then at the end of the day here, you can click on the FX option here, and you can see that then you need to define the value and the option of what you are going to be doing with that data. So you need to define what is the right expression that you're going to be able to do with this function. You can follow this tutorial exactly to understand every single parameter over there. But as I mentioned before, you are going to see setting up, the data pane and saying, hey, this is exactly the behavior that I would love to do in top of my data back there. Once you are up and running with everything here, you're going to be just publishing the report to your tenant, and you're going to be able to see that report directly in your Fabric space. How it's going to look like that, is first of all, going to the home screen in Power BI Desktop, using the publish option back in the top back there. Once you click on publish, that's going to be allowing you to save your changes on the report. And then you're going to see, in my case, if I go back here in my workspace in Fabric, you can see the workspace back there, and you can enter the workspace and you can open the report. If the report is not connected with the right credentials, remember that in my case, the report name is right back. You can click in the three dots there, and you can go to settings. And remember that credentials is something that is usually challenging here, but you can go to data connections, or you can also go to data source credentials here and edit the credentials and connect again using your own services and your user licensing to connect to your SQL database in Fabric again. So that's pretty much the process itself. Once you have that up and running, the last mention that I would love to do here is the write back. That is, this is the report up and running in my tenant. What it's going to look like for me to add descriptions on my tenant is going to be just click on any of these categories over here. For example, I'm going to use one of them, HL fork, for example, and I'm going to add PowerMate's test fork. And once I click on this option and then click on submit, we can see in the description that it's going to be uploading that to my SQL database, and it's going to provide that option to see this description within my tenant here. So what I'm doing here is adding a write back option to add descriptions in top of any categories of products in my case and my scenario. So that's pretty much the process itself. There's so much that I would love to keep sharing here, but our video is too long for today. But that is pretty much what are going to look like to deliver user functions, and in this case doing a write back operations in top of our data. So overall for me, this is really mind-blowing and a great feature that users from business perspective ask since the early days of Power BI. So what do you think, Alex, around this?
Wow, that's yeah. I'm with you. This is mind blowing. You know, this is gonna be fun for many business users for sure. So PowerMate, if you found this helpful, you know, smash that like button, subscribe to PowerMate channel, and comment how you would apply the translytical task flow in your organization. We might feature your idea on the next video.
And of course, we are going to be doubling down on specific on how to create user functions that allow you to do so many things in your Power BI reports. So as usual, together, let's unlock the full potential of Power Platform and Microsoft Fabric.